Whether you are seeking spiritual connection or are a spiritual mentor, companion, or seeker doing spirit healing work, come, dip into the nourishing well of spiritual wisdom. Let's explore together and uncover insights from mapmakers and foragers in the wild territory of spiritual companioning. I'm your host, Reverend Amy Beltane. Today, I'm talking with Dorothy James about ancestral healing, mediumship, musictation, and loving the world one seeker at a time through soul care. Welcome, Dorothy. Good to have you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Reverend Amy. It's good to be here.
Let's start hearing just a little bit about you. If you could share a little bit about what's the story of how you became a spiritual care provider. And then maybe, why companioning, why spiritual direction work in particular?
Sure. I came into it guided really by an ancestor who had crossed the veil. I didn't know anything about spiritual direction and was seeking to really find my purpose. Knowing what that was, was ministry, but I knew that it wouldn't look like what the church with different names would call it. For instance, I was raised in the Pentecostal church. And so to be in the Pentecostal church and working in the Church of God in Christ, I only had a few options because women were limited in terms of ministry. So I knew there was something that was not quite settling for me in that setting. So I set out to find, what is this quest in me? What is this that is, it was just eagerly and pushing. It wanted to be born. So I started doing some research, and lo and behold, here was LMU, Loyola Marymount University, which was at that time right around the corner from me where I lived. And they had a master's program, one in yoga and one in spiritual psychology, which you could also take the African-American aspect of spiritual direction, or you could take the layman program. And there was, what was the other one? There was one other. But you had to take the certificated program for spiritual direction. Even if you went through the program to get your master's in spiritual psychology, you still needed the certification in spiritual direction.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
And so it was they went hand in hand, and I said, okay, well, let me be true to the program. And I was inundated with LMU life for 3 years, and went into the program, and it was really, really rewarding. I learned a lot, did a lot of research, and one of the things that I walked away with was a lot of study that I did in African-American ancestry, African-American and African spirituality.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I developed and wrote my thesis based on those two, African-American and African spirituality.
So this is fantastic. So I've already heard you talking about that your quest was a seekership. You were seeking, what is my gift in the world? How can I live out what I know I need to do? But the institution I'm part of is not allowing me to, and searching for that, connecting with an ancestor and being led, and then trying and it not working and trying again, and it did land well. I also heard you talking about, there's the official words, the director and the directee, and I often call them companion and seeker. But I loved what you were saying, is that you are ministering to each other. You are there for each other, to listen to each other.
Absolutely. And I call it soul care.
Soul care.
It's reciprocal. It's so reciprocal. I find that is amazing. It's been this way ever since before I started with spiritual direction. I find that I learned so much about myself many times. I have learned over the years a lot about myself through the other.
Let's bring it back to your journey, because your journey sounded like so much unfolding and expanding, and you unfolded and expanded into the African American experience, into African spirituality. You want to talk a little bit about that? You have,
Yeah.
yeah.
The way I came around to African spirituality was at the time, as I was going through the program, there was a young woman who her name was Gogo Ikaya Isima. And I met Gogo Ikaya Isima, and it appeared to me that we had a lot in common because her grandfather was a Pentecostal bishop.
Mm.
And then my uncles and my father, they were Pentecostal pastors and bishops. And she just captured my attention as she gave her speech, which was that she had been diagnosed with mental illness.
Mm.
And they had diagnosed her with, I think it was bipolarism and schizophrenia.
Wow.
Well, anyways,
Heavy
long story
diagnosis.
short,
Yeah.
yeah, but she wasn't crazy. She had some gifts that were very different, and her ancestors were coming to her for healing. And she was thinking that she was losing her mind, and she was having a lot of profound experiences. And so she was a part of a program called Crazy Wise. I don't know if you've heard of the documentary, but it was called Crazy Wise.
I haven't.
And
Thank you for bringing that up. I'll try to remember to put it in the notes so people can click through to it.
yes, Crazy Wise is a documentary where they talk about here in the United States, particularly, there is no room for spiritual experiences outside of the psychology areas of saying let's locate what's going on with you through a DMS.
Yeah.
And let's label you,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even give you some medication to shut these things down,
Right.
as the mind goes through all of these various realms of consciousness. And so she just happened to have a gift, a healing gift.
Mm-hmm.
And she was guided to and met another woman who said, I believe I know what's going on with you. And she had to take a pilgrimage to South Africa, stayed there for a year. She was healed and she became a healer. So she went through the initiation process. So when she comes back to the States, she really realized that she had a lot of work to do. And I met her, I want to say maybe a year in after she became a Gogo. And a Gogo, actually, Gogo means wise one, a wise female, a mother.
In what tradition
And
specifically?
in Sangoma, in South African Sangoma.
Okay.
Mhm. And so I met her actually, she did the speech, and then we met up afterwards, and she did a divination for me. I at that time, my mother had passed, and I was going through a really hard time. And I said, I'm really, really interested in what you're talking about in terms of the ancestors, because I know that's true. I said, I've had that experience with my father.
Mm-hmm.
That I knew that he, whatever they say this is about death, I said, I don't believe it. I don't believe the traditional ideas in the way they, things are thought in the Western world about death. I said, because my father was more present spiritually to me than he had ever been before in our lives. And so my mother had passed, and I had not had this experience with my mother. I wasn't for sure if I was going to have the same experience after my mother transition. My mother never came in dreams. My father was always, he would come in dreams, he would come with warnings, he would come with messages, he would come with guidance. My mother passing, no word. And so I had the divination with Gogo Ikaya. And let's just say that the session ended with me balled up like a fetus on the floor in tears. My mother came through that session, and my mother told her, I knew it was my mother because she knew nothing about what had happened in our family prior to this past. And my mother had told her to, she said to tell me that I needed to forgive. And the Gogo Ikaya was, in a powerful way, it was like she just opened up and allowed to be used by another energy. And she was nurturing and kind. And I sensed my mother in a greater way. And so I said, wow, this woman is really being used by the ancestors and opening herself up to be a medium. But that's not for everyone. So I'm saying this because it's not for everyone. People will say, I want to go into doing this ancestry work. But the gift of it may not be that you're the person who's the medium. You may be the person who may be able to listen and hear and say, I know of a plant medicine that can help you, but not necessarily be the one that is gifted in that way. Gogo Ikaya Sima and many of the other Gogos, they're gifted in that way. And they're not all gifted equally as well. So your gift in the ancestral realm may be very different. And so after meeting her and working with her, I began to realize that the richness of African spirituality was so needed for a lot of healing in the African American community. And one of the things I remember in my initiation was this big drum, boom, boom. My heart was in each beat. And it was like my heart was becoming softer and softer because I was releasing purging so much, and tears just flowed. And the music that the Gogos were singing in the songs, the harmonies, it was such a divine place in space in that moment. And more than anything, healing. And the healing that I received that day, I walked out of there new, and healed. And I said, thank you, God. Thank you to the ancestors. This is my walk. I am now home. I know that I'm home spiritually. And that has been a part of the journey ever since I met Gogo Ikaya Sima.
Yeah, and I want to say again what I heard you say about the gift of the African traditions, Sangoma, Yoruba, Ifa, the gifts that are available there are so needed in the West, and to the degree that it is appropriate to everyone. And the ability to connect to ancestors, the ability to do what we would call mediumship in the West, or possession, is some of the work of spiritual direction work. Yes. In that context.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so with my own directees and my own soul caring that I do,
yeah.
I do a lot of ancestry work, a lot of healing with families, and um, a lot of my directees are suffering in some way or another with family conflict. Just a lot of family healing needing to go forth. And a lot of it stems from a passing of another, of a mother or a father,
Mhm.
and the healing not taking place.
It's
And then
passed down.
it's just passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah, yeah.
And so a lot of the healing that takes place in my work is ancestral.
So one of my questions was, what is I mean, every person who does spiritual direction work is coming from their grounding, their spiritual grounding, and their particular life experience and their particular gifts. And so each person who's doing that work has certain things they're offering. Um, I hear one of the pieces of what you have to offer is that family healing, ancestral healing. I also think I heard something about music. And as
Yes.
I studied with West African expats in the US doing African drumming. Your bio says something about musictation. So
Musictation.
tell me more about that.
Sure. So the work that I do, musictation evolved out of spiritual direction. And as I began working with my directees, I would oftentimes, especially if some of the hard times that they'd be going through, I would say to them, what is some of the songs of your family? What's your mother's favorite music? What was your mother's favorite song? And because I carry the music of my family, I'm the person in my family that played piano at age, I started playing at age 7. I had an ear for music, and I started playing for my father's church at 7. And over the lifetime of my life, is in my youth and young adult, I played for various churches and various denominations. And it was clear to me that music was a healing tool for me because so many people would be healed in just church music, just coming into the church and sitting in the back and the music going forth. Music always has a healing energy, and more than that, is very powerful in terms of the vibrational,
Yes.
the vibration of it. And so it was clear to me after my initiation, that being the carrier of my family's music, that it was music that was going to be the tool it was the tool that was in my hand. Sometimes we look around for, Reiki or well, what am I to do? And yeah, we're looking around. I think of Moses when he needed to part the Red Sea, and then God said, "What's in your hand, Moses?" And he said, "The rod." He said, "Stretch it out." And so I said, well, what's in my hand? This piano and music, the drums, the crystal bowls, the sounding bowls, and all of the instruments that I could play. And I said, well, then there it is, music. And I have been able to facilitate so many healing. And sometimes it's a different instrument depending on the person. Or sometimes it's a different presentation depending on where I'm facilitating or what I'm doing. But it is music. And so I knew that music was healing. I knew that music was powerful. And I knew that I had a gift in it. And I knew that it was in my hand and it could be used in my soul care work.
One of my mentors once told me to stop working so hard to find and learn a tool and instead look at what I already do. And if it feels easy to you, maybe that's what you should be doing. Which I think somehow I learned somewhere that whatever is your gift to the world should be something that's hard for you. And no, it should be something that brings you joy and feels easy to you. What a wonderful, joyful new way of looking at life. So you said a little bit about people who come to you tend to be somebody who's experiencing conflict with someone in their family or some sort of family dynamic that's come down to them. Can you tell, we need to be, of course, conscious of not breaking confidentiality, but what are the kinds of yearnings and what kinds of healing are folks seeking when they find you?
Usually, as I said, a lot of it is family. A lot of it is ancestral. Someone has crossed the veil. And the healing needs to take place. And sometimes they'll find me through someone, or sometimes they'll just come. They'll be guided some way or somewhere or another. And I listen very closely. And I know once, they tell me what they're looking for and why they're looking, I go, oh, this is ancestral healing needed here. And so I begin to work with them and for ancestral healing and for the healing for the family that is still on this side of the veil.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times, let's say, I'll have a directee whose child is on drugs, and they feel the burden of that child being addicted and not having any control in their life over this drug. And then they become depressed and burdened. How do you do soul care with someone? Well, you can do the soul care, helping them to understand that they can be lifted spiritually, even though these things are going on physically in the physical realm, but how to have faith and hold on and be there for the child. How can I be there for the child? They may ask, because I'm so burdened. I'm so disappointed. You hear a lot of things that they're feeling and emotionally going through. And what's amazing is a lot of times the parent will tell me that the child, I would say, does your child love music? Oh, yes, we used to listen to music together. Music is always present. And I would say, why don't you send him a song today? Send him one of the songs that you guys enjoyed. And it never ceased to amaze me how they would come back and say, oh my God, he picked up the phone, or she picked up the phone and called me and cried and said, oh, Mom, I remember that, when we were together, and I remember, oh, Mom. So music has a healing component. I don't care. I would tell anyone, if you want to change an atmosphere, introduce music to that environment. And I have found that many times as I'm working with an individual, of course, I ask them for permission to work with an ancestor. I'll ask for that permission, and they will give me the music to send to them. And they'll say, how did you know that my family used to sing this song? Because when you're in that level of work, and you've done the work, and you are gifted, and you're allowing spirit to use that gift, you can be used as a medium. You can allow the music. I would ask, the music would come. I share it. That's all I'm to do. It opens them up. Mm-hmm. Once one lady was struggling with some problems with her husband, and she began playing music. Music was absent in their home where it used to be present. And their whole relationship did a shift. It just turned. So musictation to me is, and I that word, I coined it. I didn't know if anyone else was using it because I said music is like a meditation. Meditation will take you meditation will take you through various realms of consciousness: waking, sleeping, dreaming, transcending, cosmic, and union. There's various realms of consciousness. Well, music will do the same.
Yeah.
And just to think how indigenous it is, how ancient it is, and how it was used in the tribes and the villages. There was always sound and music.
I can see your gift, your ministry, your work with your seekers as life-changing. And I could also see it as world-changing.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I have begun to recognize that music is changing, and music is changing the world. As the world has changed, I mean, we hear of all types of music. Some not so light, and some being very dark. I don't shy away from what people might call, quote unquote, dark music. I've had young people to come to me and we talk about music, and they say, well, have you heard this? Or, and yes, yeah, I'll take a listen.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's very bizarre.
Yeah.
And very strange, but it's what's resonating and vibrating with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Death metal or rap or trance
Yes.
music, electronica, they're all authentic expressions of something true.
Yes. A reality of some sort.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to have the courage and the willingness and the heart to walk with people who are going through those dark times. Because I believe that darkness and light coexist. There wouldn't be one without the other. But when you live in a world of polarity, so good and bad and dark and light, and people come with a set concepts, and a lot of them are based in polarities, polars. You need the night. You need the melatonin to sleep for the body, for the mind, for the soul. And if it was sunshiny all day, we wouldn't be able to really fulfill our own needs in nature.
Yeah. The seed needs to be under the earth.
In the darkness.
Darkness.
So yeah, I hope I answered that question. There's so much richness in it, and how I facilitate spiritual direction. I really just listen, and then when I feel the guide, I'll guide in terms of giving a little bit of medicine, and usually that medicine is, why don't you do some praying and meditating with some music? And if they really need deeper healing, then the music is still there. That's when I really work towards getting permission from them to do the ancestral work and contacting and asking their ancestors to be with them, to be a guide, and to assist.
Beautiful. One of my questions was, what lights you up? And what it is clear to me, you have shared what lights you up.
Yes, music.
Yes, yes.
Music lights me up. I love all types of music. Prior to 2020, prior to the shutdown, I would facilitate a retreat, a musictation retreat in Santa Barbara, but I have not facilitated I'm planning to put something together. I
So something
haven't,
might happen.
something might happen.
All right.
Something may be coming up in the making really soon.
So get on that Facebook page, get on the Instagram so you get the announcement
keep
from
an
Dorothy
eye
when it
out
comes
for it.
out. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me for Wild Wisdom from Spiritual Direction, and we'll be in touch. Blessings.
All right. You're so welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for Wild Wisdom from Spiritual Direction. I'm Amy Beltane, and I've been a spiritual care provider since 2010, and I'm passionate about the gifts of finding and living your spiritual direction. Support this channel by clicking like and subscribe.